I'm Joanna Toch, and this is a Family Law Cafe podcast. I'm delighted to have here with me today Mr. Protap Nath. He is a barrister. He works with Family Law Cafe. He works both in immigration work and children work. So for us, he's dealing with his children work. And I thought it would be really interesting to chat with him today to talk about both that and just to see what the differences are when he's working in those different courts. So welcome.
Thank you.
Really
Good
nice to have you
afternoon.
here.
Yes.
As I've said, you've been working with Family Law Cafe now for a couple of years, I think. Is that right?
Yes, I have. Yes.
And for us, you deal with mostly children cases, don't you?
That's correct. Yes. I
Yeah.
have been, yes.
And how have you found that?
Yeah. No. Really good. Really good. I mean, I've been doing some children cases for some years now.
Mm-hmm.
The use of the platform is different,
Mm-hmm.
and I've found it very helpful.
Yeah.
The way it works. It took a bit of getting used to for me.
Yeah.
At the start, not too long actually. When I say a bit of getting used to, probably a few days really,
Yeah.
just to know how the systems work.
Mm-hmm.
And once that was in place, it's really good. It's worked really well for me.
Yeah. And I know that everyone talks, all the feedback we get is, they have a really nice manner, which I think is so important in the family court, that you just don't go in there all guns blazing. That's rarely appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think that when I think of you doing cases, you just have a really nice attitude, and that you're really good with people, and that's what I'm told by the people that have you've worked with. So thank you for that. But I also know that you deal with immigration law, which is a different area. It's an area I've never practiced in, so I don't know very much about it. I don't even think I studied it, but I know that in family law, I've had there's some crossovers. So, for example, quite a way back now, a lot of our work was in the High Court. So family work often was in the High Court, and particularly abduction. So there was a crossover with immigration. So I thought I'd ask you some questions about that. But before I get to that, what made you become a family law, immigration law barrister? What was the driving force?
Yes, I mean, what happened with me? I predominantly did immigration previously. Started off with some work in policy, and then I moved on to immigration and court work. And then I had a case which involved family matter, and the solicitor involved at the time asked me. He said, "Look, the clients are really happy with you. They'd rather have you in the family matter.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, can you also deal with their family matter?"
Yeah.
So I had to think about it for a moment. And for continuity, it does make sense, because it's sometimes quite daunting for anyone to have a barrister deal with their case and then have another barrister deal with another side of their case. So I said yes to that, and then I haven't really looked back.
Yeah.
So it's moved forward from there, and I have quite a few cases which have a mixture of both immigration and family elements in there. Specifically, I may get instructed for one or the other, but then you will find there are similarities with the two areas. They sort of fold over each other.
Yeah. And you spoke about policy, because I think that before you became a barrister, you were working in the Home Office. Is that right?
Yes. So I did some policy work. So I worked on sort of with ministers, had a team of staff, and I worked in that field. So that gave me quite a good background into how the Home Office operates and the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And then I went into the legal side of things thereafter that. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not going to ask you to give a whole explanation of the law, because I'm sure it's really complex.
Yes.
That I always get the impression when I'm doing family law that the immigration side takes longer. I mean, if someone were applying, and it's probably a really dumb question, but anyway, I'm going to ask it. So if someone makes an application to the court, let's say they're in this country and they want to remain here, let's say, do those applications take a long time, and how long does it take?
They're taking quite a long time now. So it depends what the application is. Obviously, there's different types of applications, but you will have applications which may take up to a year, if not sometimes longer.
Yeah.
And that's only because the backlog, there's quite a few cases, and I think they're trying their best to meet that. They try as quickly as possible. But yes, you may be waiting a long time sometimes.
And then if
Cases.
people appeal, would it take another year or something like that? Because often I'm in a family case and someone's saying, well, I'm appealing this refusal.
Yeah.
And then it seems to just take ages before
Yeah.
we know what's
I mean, they
happened.
also do take sometimes a long time, maybe not a year, but we're talking about a fair amount of time as well. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, so I've seen the times change
Hmm.
over the years. So, um, i- it's very hard to say. On some occasions it's been less.
Hmm.
Right now, it's taken that sort of time, from what I can see, and it may change again in a few years' time.
Yeah. And so when I'm dealing with children cases, sometimes there's an immigration aspect.
Hmm.
And for example, the court may want to know about someone's immigration status. And my experience is the judge will ask, there's a particular form that's completed, and
Correct.
then
Yeah.
that's sent to the
Yeah.
Home Office, and then that information is, specific questions are asked, and then the information comes back. And am I right in saying that there's no obligation, is there, for one party to give all their immigration information to the other party? Let's say they're in court, in the family court.
No, I know. I think what happens is, so that I think what you're touching on is disclosure.
Yeah,
And just to give you an example, so you might be in an immigration setting, in an immigration first tier court, and then a family matter may be raised in there.
yeah.
Now, disclosure can be quite a problem sometimes, because the courts, as in the family courts, permission must be sought from the family
So
court
you were
to.
talking about, so if someone in an immigration case
Mm,
wants material from the family
correct.
court,
Yes, I'm
can you
looking at it.
explain how that works?
So what would happen is you would have to seek permission from the family court
Yeah,
to allow for that information to be relayed in the immigration courts.
yeah,
So to save time, barristers, lawyers, solicitors may have arranged that already. They may have asked the family courts to say, for instance, as we're sort of dealing with children here, and looking at children, the situation with children may be that they need that information regarding the children, and it might be a C100, it might be a child arrangement order, it could be anything of that nature. And to introduce that into the immigration court, that's where there's permission required. So if you don't have the permission, it could be that you need that information, or you'd like that information relayed in the immigration courts. And it could be that the hearing would be adjourned. So
okay.
effectively adjourned, because the judge just cannot deal with it, the immigration judge, just to be clear. So the immigration judge would need that information first,
Hmm.
and it all falls into, without getting complex and disclosure rules.
Hmm.
Um, so he would need that before he can introduce that information into court. And if that's essential for that individual's case, then they may request for an adjournment, or the judge may request for that adjournment to take place. So that's where it sometimes happens in that way, and I've seen it happen a few times in that way.
I've had people say to me, oh, he's only trying to see this child because he wants to stay in the country. Is that something that, are they
Yeah,
right to say that, or does that make any sense, or is there any, does that resonate with you? He doesn't really want to see his son, but he wants a contact order because that will help him with his immigration status, as an example. I've
yeah,
had that said.
that does happen, and I think it's really unfair that assumptions are made in that way. You will have individuals who want to see, or have been seeing their children, and they want to see their children, and it could be that they've got an immigration matter running at the same time. So it's unfair for individuals to say that it's only because of the, they're using the children in many ways for their immigration application, and I don't think that's fair, without knowing all the details. But that misconception sometimes allows for, I would say, some form of discrimination to that individual if it's looked upon in that way. And I think that's where it does become a little bit unfair. And that's something else they have to deal with in court, then, you see. So,
So what do you mean by the tribunal saying
mhm.
you don't really want to see your son, you're just making this an issue? Is that what you mean?
So yes, what
Yeah.
will happen is, so if we look at a tribunal case, an immigration case,
Hmm.
it may be, questions will be asked. How often do you see your children? When's the last time you see your children, or one child or two, or whatever it might be? And if, for instance, he hasn't seen the children for the last, and they're 6 years old, he hasn't seen them for the last 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
he's not really got that great of involvement. I think we can draw
Mm-hmm.
that assumption.
Mm-hmm.
But then you will have individuals who will be seeing their children quite regularly, have that relationship. So to tar those two different situations with the same brush
Mm-hmm.
makes it quite difficult, I would say. And
Mm.
I think what I would say is there needs to be an open mind. The whoever the individuals may be, they'll have either a relationship going or they want a relationship going. So the opportunity should be given. And I
Yeah.
think your original question was the approach sometimes is taken in this way. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
might be because obviously parents,
No, you're
when
absolutely
they're
right.
separated, make, they're
Yes,
going to be often making negative comments. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that's the
correct.
sort of thing that might be said.
Yes.
Just help me with this because, again, having really no real knowledge of immigration law. So if a child is born here, let's say both parents don't have the right to stay here, would that give the parents the right to stay here? So let's say the child is born in this country. Is that child then a British citizen?
It doesn't necessarily work like that.
Okay.
So it could get quite complex. You have to
Yeah.
look at where the law is with that. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because someone is born in the UK,
Hmm.
if the two parents have no status in the UK,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that the
Again,
child
I've been in
automatically then.
family cases where the judge has wanted to know
Mm,
that information, that very
Sure,
information,
sure, got you.
because
Yeah,
it's right, isn't it, that a family court has no precedence over an immigration court. So let's say a family court said, I know there were cases where, for example, someone wanted to adopt a child,
mhm.
and that would mean that, under family law, it would mean that they would be staying here. Whereas I'm sure I've been in cases where it doesn't follow. What the family court says doesn't dictate what will happen in the immigration
No,
case as a general principle.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the courts will make their decision. So the immigration courts will make the decision. I think they'll consider
Yeah.
that side of things as well. But
Yeah.
I think the immigration courts, so you're absolutely right. They will look at that case. I would say, whatever the case may be. Again, you've got a variety of different situations, and yes, you're correct.
Family law,
Hmm.
um, the human rights aspects, Article 6, right to a fair hearing,
Mm.
Article 8,
Article 8,
right to
yeah.
a family life. Hopefully I've got those the right way around.
Yeah.
They always sort of chant them out at the end of a case. I always sometimes wonder whether, how
Mm.
front of mind they are, but yeah. Obviously they're big concepts in immigration law, aren't they? The human rights
They are.
concepts.
They are. So they're areas where, yeah, I mean, they're areas where judges will have to consider time in the UK, relationships. So again, relating that with children, what's a relationship in the family? Have they got other children members? So it could be like nieces and nephews and other children they're involved with. So sometimes you'll have arrangements where they'll care for children. So you might have an individual who maybe is seeking, it could be asylum or leave to remain in the UK, and they'll have a situation where they're involved with other family members by being in the UK. They might have been here for a number of years. So the human rights really considers those aspects of their time in the UK, the relationships they may have formed with other individuals, be it with their own children. I'm just giving you a wider sort of perspective of this. So it's sort of looking at it more widely. And then what they'll do, they'll have a proportionality exercise and they'll look at the public interest and they'll look at the consideration of all of that and say, well, whether this sort of falls into the criteria of human rights or not. So again, a big area,
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And again, it's an area where I would say there's been a lot of case law, and there is a lot of case law with the different scenarios again. So
Okay. And because you practice in both courts,
yes,
family court is generally in private, and you, particularly where it's affecting children, you can't report anything that's going to identify those children to protect their best interests. How is an immigration tribunal run? Is it in open court or is it closed court?
so immigration court is a public court, so you can walk in and sit down. Now you will have cases sometimes in chambers. So certain cases, there might be some trafficking cases, for instance. And
Sorry,
again,
what do you mean by trafficking?
So you
Child
could,
trafficking.
it could be
Yeah.
child trafficking, it could be trafficking of adults as well, sensitive matters.
Yeah.
They may ask for an all-female court in some cases, or it just could be that it needs to be in chambers.
Yeah.
So that would mean no one could really enter in, the public could not enter in.
Yeah.
So those are the restricted ones, and there are other cases where it's restricted when there's more serious cases,
Yeah.
which involve like deportations, and well, not all, but there's I would say if we look at it this way, more serious cases where the Home Office feels it necessary.
What's your preference? Do you have any preference, or what do you enjoy about the different aspects that you deal with? Because
Right, okay,
you know,
yeah.
for a barrister, I mean, people may not know this, a lot of barristers just do one area of law. So it's relatively unusual to deal with two areas of law in the way you do. And what's the proportion of cases that you deal with?
So in a given week now, it might be 50-50. I might do half of family cases and half of immigration. I don't know about when you say a preference, sometimes you will get a case where you'll really enjoy and you'll find you're getting great results. So, I mean, how I look at things is if you have the client, you're looking for the best interests of the client. When you're dealing with children's cases, obviously you're looking for the best interests. And we say in immigration cases, Section 55, best interests of the child. And then, as you know, in the family side of things as well, what we're trying to achieve. Very similarly, the best interests again.
And so that's really interesting. So is it the same factors, or because you've got a best interest test in both areas?
Yeah.
So do you argue the same factors, or is it different?
Without making it complicated,
Yeah.
I sort of look at it as very similarly, considering their interest and what's important in their interest. And again, heavily case loaded on the immigration side of things. And I think there's a fair amount of case law, I would say, in family as well.
Family, I don't know as much. I think that the cases are so fact specific.
They
in
are
children cases, I would say.
But there's a fair few. I mean, when I've looked at them, I've seen quite a fair few come up. But the idea is obviously, and this is where I'm sort of coming back to what I prefer. If you can, I would say, feel you've done something, you've gone into a case, and you've seen it going in one direction, and you've changed that, the course of it, and you've got parents in family case, parents speaking together, and or negotiating or working together when they were completely worlds apart previously. It does make you feel like you've achieved something.
Yeah,
and
it's quite satisfying.
It is, and if that continues as well in the future, then even better, because that's where you want it to do, for the children to have both parents, because essentially that's what we're trying to do, is trying to get them working together. And I think that's where I get satisfied. And on the immigration side of things, yes, definitely when you win a case, and when it's quite complex in law, or it might be complex in the facts, and sometimes I'll have a case where you'll have 7 witnesses. So you're working through all the different witnesses, and you might not have much in the way of documentation. So you might have a case where someone's trying to rely on being in the UK for 20 years, and unfortunately everything's been burnt in a fire. So all their documents for the last 20 years have gone. And then reliance is placed on witnesses to say this person's been here and he's not left the country, and using your evidence in that way. And I've been successful in some really, I would say, difficult cases. And that's quite satisfying, because you're obviously working with not very much and achieving what you're trying to achieve. So, yes, and I think that's probably working in the area for a long time. Hopefully the experience has helped me get there. So, yes. So there's satisfaction in both, just to answer that question. Yeah.
I think you, with your immigration work, you work both the Home Office and for private people. So you're looking at both sides.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Which is interesting.
So yes, I've got work I still do for the Home Office, and I do work on the private. Obviously, when you work for one or you work for the other, you're a professional. You do what you're, as a barrister, you do. So, and it works absolutely fine. Works really well, actually.
Well, presumably it's a bit like years ago I used to work as barrister in crime, and I would prosecute and defend.
Mhm.
And I found that doing both really sharpened you up, because that you'd analyse the case
Yes.
from both perspectives. And when you prosecute, you've just got to make sure you can prove every part of the case. And then you sort of think, oh yeah, if I was defending that, that's something I'd pick out on. So it's a really good discipline, I think.
I think so, because you get both sides of the story,
Yeah.
so you can see the arguments being made from
Mhm.
one end,
Mhm.
and then you can see the arguments being and I'm joining together, so to speak, both of them, and so yeah, I don't know if it's like a polished product, but it's more having an understanding, I think,
Yeah.
and that really does help. It does really
Yeah.
help, I have to say.
And then when you do your children work,
Mm.
I mean, I know we instruct you for mothers and fathers, but
Yes.
do you find that you act for both mothers and fathers? Any percentage difference, or is it pretty even?
I think definitely even.
Mhm.
I think what really needs to happen is how you adapt to individuals, and I think, and I'm really grateful what you said earlier on, that the feedback's been great,
Oh yeah.
because I try to understand what the issues are as an individual, rather than just looking at the papers. I
Yeah.
take the time to speak to the individuals, and I think that's how I work. I do like to speak a lot as well. So then I actually find out what the issues are. You can see that in the papers, obviously, as well, but then I don't think you can get everything on the papers. You do need to have that, and that's where the platform's been really helpful, because I've asked questions sometimes on the platform, and just simply to answer, and it could be someone from the Family Law Cafe, a host might answer that question, or it might be the mother or the father, and then it gives me that perspective of where I'm going, and then if I need more information for their case, because obviously I'm getting a position statement together, working on how best to deal with their case, it helps me understand a lot more. And then I tend to have conferences as well, where I'll talk to them on a one-to-one basis. So that's not with the Family Law Cafe. That's just as in
Yeah.
individuals. So then they get to know me,
Mhm.
and I think that's where, hopefully, that's where the good feedback has been, because I try to really drill down to what the issues are, and to support them. Because at the end of the day, if we look at it this way, it's probably a time where they're at their lowest in their lives, sometimes in some occasions, not all, but it's a very difficult time. It doesn't matter who it might be, and if anything, they're looking for that support, and that support isn't just going to court. I think that support is beyond that. You really need to have faith in who you've got with you, understand that person. So I'm talking about from a barrister's end. And so I think it's also knowing the individual. And that's the reason why I think family may work a little bit more different in that way, because it is personal details. It's a lot of emotions. Similarly, you have that with immigration. I'm not saying it's not, but you do have a lot of emotions in family, and I might need to spend a little bit more time in some of those family cases in that way. So it does depend, and as I said, it can vary with both immigration and family. So and I'm glad that I'm helping, if that's the
Oh,
response.
100%.
Yes.
And I set up Family Law Cafe with the online platform, the online case space, so that people wouldn't have that situation of the barrister just turning up at court.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people come to me and say, I need a barrister on the day. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not
Yeah.
your person, because
Yeah.
I know that if I turn up on the day, it's the prep, it's making sure everything is in order.
Well,
It's
exactly.
making sure that you do fully understand them, their
Exactly.
motivations,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
there's usually something it'll take me some time, and then there'll be some small detail which makes me understand the case. It might be something that people don't, it's just something that comes out and I'm like, yeah, I get it now, I get it. But I always want to understand the case I'm doing, because I know that I can argue it as strongly as I can in that way. And you work like that, and I set up the platform in that way so that
Mm.
you wouldn't just meet them at court on the day, you would meet them before. And I know that we leave it to you to
Mm.
just arrange that
Yes.
meeting by phone
Mm.
or video meet, however's
Mhm.
convenient.
Mhm.
Um, there's that interaction before, and then
Yes,
the position statement is representative of what they want. I mean,
completely.
obviously you
Yeah.
use your
Mm,
expertise,
mm.
but then it's that synergy of
It is, yeah.
them wanting to get those points across,
Mm.
and you think, yeah, this is the best way of getting that across.
And I think that's exactly what it is, because I tend to have that conference with them first
Yeah,
and then write a position statement.
yeah,
I don't, so I read the papers and I know individuals might want to just write the position statement. They know what the case is. I always wait,
hmm
because it might be, and I think that's being intuitive, as what you've just said and what you
hmm
do. So we work quite similarly that way, I
yeah,
think. It could be that odd word. It
yeah,
just could be something they say which does tell you, actually, that's that's something really important,
hmm
and that we really need to look at that, and that could be what's concerning the two individuals.
hmm
And sometimes it really does turn matters completely around. And I've had cases, and I think in the family law cafe, where they have started to speak again, and we've got an agreement, and I've walked in, spoken to the barrister in the morning, and that's what we tend to do. We have that first hour,
hmm
we're asked to attend court just to have those conversations. And I always try to be there for that hour,
hmm
just to have that conversation and to see if there's anything we can agree on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because you've done some long running cases, haven't you, where they've
Yes.
come back again and again, and one, it was particularly, I think the other side were particularly aggressive actually,
Mm,
but I
mm,
remember in that one, I don't want to say aggressive, but they were
yeah.
very set on what they wanted, and it was a very, very
I
difficult
think I know which one
situation. You
you're
know what I'm talking
talking
about?
about. Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
I think in the end, they all sat, didn't they all sit, you all sat down and had a
We did.
meeting,
We
and it
did.
was
Yeah.
after about 4 or 5
Yes.
hearings, and
Yeah.
I think it was a children's guardian. And I think then they both moved
Yeah.
really significantly.
They
It was
did.
like something changed there.
They did. Yeah.
I think you were
Absolutely.
very much a part of that.
Yes. And no, thank you. And
Mm,
I think that was a very good result,
yeah.
because that case, as you said, was getting very complex, and it wasn't good
Mm,
for anyone.
no.
It just wasn't beneficial for
No.
anyone, let alone the children.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, the parents have to try to work together, don't they? So we don't want to get them far apart. And if it continued in that, they were just getting further and further apart. That's what I found. So we've managed to get them together, and it's a real achievement,
It
actually.
was.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the difference in what we're doing, aren't we? We're
Mm,
trying to put a strong case up against,
mm.
particularly in children matters, where parties have got to then continue to work together.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's got to be, obviously a consent order is the best if you can get everyone agreed, but it's got to be a palatable option, and one
Yeah.
where, because there's a continuing relationship. I suppose
Yes.
it's like having two businesses that still want to do business
Well,
with
well,
each other.
well, exactly. I mean, that's going to continue, is it
Yeah,
not? It's going to
yeah,
continue in the future. So that's part of the what we do, is it not? We're trying to work, and I think that's where, if you understand what the issues are before you walk into court, so you've taken the time out to spend with them, to talk to them, actually on a level of conversation, rather than on a legal basis in some cases, just to understand what they want, what their needs are. So
yeah. No, it's great. It's great doing this. Do you ever regret going into law, or if you had this again, you're
mm,
like, oh, I can
mm,
go back to being, I don't
mm,
know, 14 years old, and
yeah.
something different I could do. Do you ever
Um,
think back to that?
God, yeah,
Something,
wanted
what
to be
else you
I
would have
wanted to
done?
be a pilot
Did
at some
you?
point, but then I thought, not so great with heights. So I think that probably changed quite quickly. I actually enjoy it. So I enjoy the advocacy.
Yeah,
I enjoy I enjoy the challenge, and what I do really enjoy as well is the unknown.
yeah,
So I'll walk into a case, and I'll just use immigration as one of those cases, and it could be some new case law. As I said, it's forever changing, forever evolving, would just land on my desk, and it was out that morning. And another barrister will say, well, Mr. Naff, does this not change your case?
yeah,
So you deal with that on the hoof. So just having to deal with that on your feet, no one else there.
yeah.
Obviously, you have your colleagues, you have your chambers if you need to make a phone call, but you generally just deal with it. So I think that's it's a bit of an adrenaline
The
rush, what
adrenaline
keeps you
rush.
going. So
Yeah.
so I think so far I'm okay, and I'm still really enjoying it. So it's a good choice. for me.
And what
So,
do you think? Where do you think your future is? Are you going to carry on doing this, or you want to do something different, or
well, probably,
specialize in one or the other, or carry on with
yeah.
both?
I mean, I'm enjoying both.
Hmm.
I'm enjoying both, and I'm sort of enjoying the areas of law. I might expand and look at maybe some other areas of law. So I've done a little bit of employment law, so it could be that's where I'm expanding
You
to a
like
little bit.
people, don't you? It's like all the
Y
areas of law you're dealing
yes,
with are very
yes.
people
I
focused, aren't
think
they?
I've always been from a very young age customer focused,
Yeah,
and I've know done roles and jobs which have been customer focused. So
yeah, yeah,
even having a team in the Home Office many years ago, and running that team and how that sort of progressed and stuff. So it seemed to be doing quite well with that as well. So
yeah,
so it's a touch wood. I
yeah,
must be
yeah,
doing something right.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
just moving it on to law and customers as well, just bringing that over there, and hopefully just supporting people and being there for people. And as you said, I like working with people. So
Yeah.
so
It's a good feeling, isn't it, when can feel you can make a bit of change
yes.
and yeah. So and you're getting that bit of adrenaline, so you obviously like something new coming
I do,
in.
yeah, I do. I love a challenge. So
Challenge.
sometimes you introduced me to a CMS child maintenance
Yeah, yeah,
matter
yeah,
quite
yeah.
recently, and it's great. It's great just getting into it, doing it. So yeah, I'm very grateful of that. So it's just going into different areas all the time, really, and
Yeah, I
working
think
with
child
them.
maintenance is something that that's a whole area, and it's really very interesting because obviously the child maintenance service deals with that, but
Yes,
people appeal that, and
yes,
then they, Schedule 1, of the Children Act. So there's different
yeah.
areas. So yeah, just going into another area. Maybe you're one of those people that just starts to get bored. Have you done one of these analysis things where they,
Oh,
identify
right,
what you're
yeah.
good at?
No, I haven't done one. I probably
No.
need to do one actually,
You'll
just to
probably just
see.
find that it's exactly what you thought already.
Maybe, yeah. But no, but yes, definitely like challenges as well. So, but I like what I'm doing in the meantime as well. So it's not
Yeah.
no sort of big
But it's always a
changes.
challenge, isn't it? Every single case you
I
do,
think it
you've
is.
always got to be on your
You
toes. There's
do
always something new that comes in.
well, exactly that.
That's, I think, why we love it, isn't it?
That's a value in it, because no case will be the same as the case you did yesterday or the day before. So it's always changing anyway. So at the end of it, obviously you're dealing with different people.
Yeah.
So different people, different scenarios, different details. So yes, I think that's probably
Yeah.
what keeps me
So
going.
it can be the same
Yeah,
law, but a different set of facts, different people, and it's different again, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah.
It is
Hmm.
definitely,
That's why we love
definitely.
it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been so good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Really love what you're doing. Thank you for working with us. We, really enjoy, I enjoy your company a lot, enjoy having a chat. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming
No, and
in.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And yeah, so thank you again. And more cases, more people working on the platform. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.